December 3rd, 2018, a date which will live in infamy. Okay, well, maybe that's overstating it. But it is the date that I uploaded this number 74 Daimler Fleetline, my first double-decker bus. And during my research for this, I found out that this actually came in 3 colors. It also came in a red and green variant. And I thought, you know what, I'd like to have all 3. So let's get into what I'm doing today. I suppose a guy could go out and buy any Daimler bus and make it into any color Daimler bus, but somehow that just didn't seem right to me. So I wanted to find a red one and restore it, and I'll be looking for a green one. And I suppose as a last resort, if I don't find one, I can go back to just finding any bus. But I'd like to find a green one and restore it green. So anyway, this one cost me $4.99. I was looking for one in a lot, but I just never came across one. This is the first one I came across. So I'm going to be doing just a straight up restoration on this. And you can see there's some damage on the right side of the bus to one of the posts up on the second level. So we'll be addressing that too. So stick around. Somewhere in the dim recesses of my memory, I seem to remember reading something about one of the reasons they quit making the Routemaster was because they couldn't make a superfast out of it. This one, somebody had painted it. There was that broken pillar, and of course, somebody had painted the headlights and such. Looks like there's a bent pillar up by the door there. That's how you get it apart right there. So the last time I did this, I used a grinding ball. I wanted to try something a little gentler this time. At first I tried this. It's almost like a grinder tip, but it was pretty ineffectual. So I went back and got my grinding ball. You have to be really careful because you don't want this to walk around on you too much. It's almost impossible not to have it happen though. But with some patience and persistence, you get it apart. Take out your seats. Give the casting a good once over. Take a look at the base. We're going to be painting that too. It's all set to go. So since we're going to be painting the base, that means that the wheels absolutely have to come off, because as you know, if you watch me at all, if I can get away with not taking them off, I will. I'm going to do the front and the back. And trust me, I did get them off. And then next thing is a bath and some stripper. I used aircraft stripper for these two because they had that thick paint on them. I wasn't sure if that was going to be easier or harder. So that's what I did. And of course, once the paint is off, it's time to clean the casting up. It was kind of funny. I was thinking of, how things evolve. What I used to do when I first started versus what I do now. When you have big flat roofs like this, by the way, it's nice to get them good and clean because the paint will show every flaw. But what I was saying was, I almost always use steel wool now. And I didn't before. And there was a little pooch that came out of the roof there, and just so that another die-cast restoration guy who used a hammer doesn't feel alone, I also use a hammer if I need to. I'm trying to level off that one section of the roof. And then I almost kind of went too far, so I had to go in and try to bend that back, which in turn created another bend that I wound up having to fix on the bottom of the window, which just goes to show you sometimes your best intentions just lead to worse things, and you wind up going in and doing what I'm doing here, which is fixing the damage that I created. Trying to fix the damage. And I was able to do it fairly successfully. And then there was like a support strut that ran right up and down at this point, and so it was bent, and I'm trying to grind away the excess portions that are bent in the wrong direction. And you know, some things are just tried and true, and I don't know who invented it. I've seen everybody do it. I suppose everybody heard about it from a different place, but super glue gel and a little bit of baking soda to help restore that pillar. And then, of course, once that hardens for, I usually leave it for a day. Then it's down to, okay, it's time to sand. And, of course, the casting has body lines in here that I'm trying to preserve while still sanding on this thing. And then, you know, you can use an X-Acto knife like I'm doing here to try to recreate the channel between those windows. If you look at the windows before and after it, you'll see there's like a ridge around the outside edge of the window, and I'm trying to recreate that. So I painted the casting with Tamiya white. I wanted the red to really stand out. It's a pretty deep red. And I wound up shooting this with enamel. I shot the first one with enamel. And there's a couple of reasons that I don't use enamel a lot. First of all, the only enamel I've ever got was the testers, which is in very small containers, so I think it's kind of spendy. It's also a pain in the ass to clean up because you have to use like mineral spirits or something, and I don't know. I just don't like cleaning up after it. The only paint worse than cleaning up after enamel is Spectraflame, because that's a real pain in the butt. Just the other thing about enamel that I like is it has a luster to it that I think is more true to the period. I think that the acrylics come out a little too glossy sometimes. I mean, I don't mind it. I like that real candy-like look. But if you look back in the day, these models were not typically real high-gloss models. Now, I know there's some guys that don't use, you know, clear coat on their models, and I'm sure that they do that to recreate that because they don't want them to be too glossy. But the problem that I see with that is acrylic paint is incredibly fragile. And I've actually dropped an acrylic painted model into a plastic container and got a flea bite as a result. So usually, in my mind, you have to clear coat over it just to offer some protection. Otherwise, it's just too chippy. This turned out really nice. The enamel usually lays on really nice too, which is another reason I like using it. And if it wasn't such a pain to clean up, I'd probably shoot enamel all the time. And there you go. You know, those guys over at Lesney are pretty clever guys, and this bus, it actually did have a suspension in the form of this little tab here on the front and the back, and both of these tabs were bent, so I wanted to kind of straighten them. So what I do is I put it into incredibly, incredibly hot water, near boiling, and I let the plastic get soft. And for those of you who think I saw this somewhere else, I didn't. This is just how I've always done it. I think somewhere else maybe saw me do it. Then I put it in really cold water while I'm holding the suspension piece back out a little past straight. Blub, 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 blub. Who am I? Blub, 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 blub. The tires had little bits of red paint on them. So it's time for some Napa know-how and some .3 brake fluid, which you can get at your Napa store. And also, some of the interior needed the whole brake fluid thing as well. After which, of course, I am back at TimeRider's Wheel and Tire, and I'm putting a coat of tire wash on these. After which, it's time for me to put some decals on this thing. I think that thing looks really good, which makes what happened after this even more tragic. When I got it all together, the last thing I usually do is paint the center of the wheel hubs. And I must have touched one of the hubs with that rubber glove that I'm wearing right there. And and it's literally, as I was putting it on the table to take the final footage for my video, I put a spot of silver paint on that spot of the bus right underneath that decal right below the lower windows. And the more I tried to fix it, the worse it got. I didn't film any of it because I was really, really ticked off. So back into the stripper it went. I had to re-repair that post. Actually, I did it a little different the second time, but I don't have any footage of it. Like I say, I was really ticked off because I had to start this all over. And I also had to wait for decals to come from England because I only had one set of these. And by the time I got around to painting it, I forgot that I had primed it. I'd been doing them doggone Tootsie toys without any primer, so I did this without primer as well. And what I did to even it off was I also painted the back. Just the very back, because I wanted the paint to match. So let's take our trip down memory lane to this chipped up disaster of a model with its second paint job that included the tires and the busted post. I think somebody else hit that with a hammer, to be perfectly honest with you. And where we finally wound up. So I think this turned out pretty good, in spite of all the troubles I had with it. Look at the shine line on that roof. It's nearly straight. You can hardly tell which post was broken. I really think I did a nice job on that part of it. The Matchbox 74B Daimler Fleetline bus. Stick around for an episode of The Bench where I share useless knowledge and things of little import. This is TimeRider, and I'll leave the light on for you. Hey, thanks for sticking around for another episode of The Bench. Well, first of all, I wanted to show you that the twins are back together, hoping, of course, at some point in time to become triplets with the addition of a green Fleetline. Also, I'm still working on this Jaguar, And I had decided to just make a Jaguar racer, so I did some research, and it seems like when they make race cars out of these things, they take the bumpers off. So here you can see the front of the car. I filed the bumper away, and then I have this one area here that I need to give a little more attention to. And then when you look at the back of the car, actually, this is the side that was not rusted. I have a couple areas that I need to work on here. So I'll keep working on that. You know, I kind of got past the point where good enough is okay. You know, I want to try to make it the best that it can possibly be. You know, and one of the things that George Hodges and I have in common is that we both like a good muscle car. And a few weeks ago, I think I showed you the orange Camaro in the middle. And since then, I picked up a red one and a blue one. And I got these out at the swap meet. And they were in really good condition. And if I find any more convertible Camaros, well, I'll get those too. And then last but not least, I talked to you about using clay to mask off this Mustang, and I had run into a couple of problems and I actually wound up having to strip it and repaint it. But I made myself a mask here, and I'm going to still use the clay. What I found, though, is that you really have to get good coverage, and the clay doesn't always do that. And I wound up with black paint in places that I didn't want black paint. So anyway, that's what's going on the bench. Everybody have a great day, and we'll see you soon.